Today we'll be just having 1 hour meeting where I'll be trying to present the whole paper in less than 30 minutes, and then we can have discussions, or we can you can also like interrupt me if something is unclear. Of course, the entirety of the paper can really not be discussed, but I'll try to cover as much as possible. So the paper that we are going to be discussing today is making sense of vision and touch using self-supervised learning for multimodal representation of contact-rich tasks. So what is this about? I'll just explain briefly. So the task is contact-rich manipulation. By contact-rich manipulation, I mean the tasks for which uh, the end effector of the manipulator needs to make contact with the object and the environment is predominantly unstructured for our particular scenario. The goal is ultimately to learn a robot policy for the given task and environment, and the task is contact rich manipulation. Some practical examples of contact rich manipulation include peg insertion, as you can see in this particular image, block packaging of a block inside inside a case or a box, and edge following. These are some examples of contact rich manipulation, and a practical usage would be that of inserting a car key uh, into the slot. So this is what we'll be discussing today, and I'm assuming that most of us are familiar with deep learning, supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. So I'll not be explaining these concepts, uh, but the concepts used in this paper will be built up upon this. So it would be beneficial if you already know these concepts. So I'll just quickly also walk through uh, what these things are, just to review, but not covering any of these in detail. So in deep learning, the difference between deep learning and machine learning is that feature extraction is automatic, and supervised learning is learning using labeled data, and unsupervised learning is learning using unlabeled data. Reinforcement learning involves learning a sequence of actions that maximize a reward function uh, in order to achieve a particular task. Again, I'm not going into details of this. I'm assuming that we are familiar to some extent, at least, with all of these terminologies. And the concepts that are addressed in this paper are uh, representation learning, first of all, and self-supervised learning. Now, you might also be familiar with this, but I'll briefly cover what representation learning is. So the core idea is that we learn representations of input data by transforming it or extracting features from it to make it suitable for a task. So the task could be classification. So for example, let's take a very simple example where we have these particular shapes like square, triangle, and circle, and we as humans can easily identify features which represent this. So corner would be the most obvious choice to represent a square. So four corners means a square, three corners means a triangle, and no corner is of course a circle. So this is how we represent this thing, and just by these representations, we kind of extract the important information needed from the input and also make it more compact, and then these representations are fed to the model, and then classification is done. Um like we do normally. And there are actually different ways in which these representations are learned. So for example, for this example, we just manually chose the representations based on the logical possibility of it. But generally, deep learning is also used to automatically formulate these representations, and there are other approaches, but this particular approach is relevant to this paper, so I'll just briefly explain it. And it's just simply that, like, instead of manually formulating the representations, representations are obtained actually by feeding these inputs to a deep learning model, and the parameters actually capture the learning and what's going on uh, in a sense, and then the output is representation. So this is just a very simple way of giving an outlook to it. And again, if you want to know more about representation learning, I have like a reference at the bottom. I'll also share the slides with you after that for those of you who want to study, and there are a few really good set of answers on for this particular question on Quora, so I think that would be really beneficial. And again, for self-supervised learning, this is another concept that is new in research these days. And for this I have kind of stolen the slides from a YouTube video, but it was a really good explanation, so I've provided the reference to this video as well. So self-supervised learning, so we all know that supervised learning is essentially using labeled data for performing learning operation or classification, regression, or anything. But self-supervised means that we would have to get the labels, we would have to generate the labels automatically. And because this is a major problem with supervised learning, because for huge amounts of data, we require labels for every single data point. So that's a huge problem, and self-supervised learning is aims to solve this particular problem. So how do we actually learn these labels? How do we get these labels uh, uh, automatically? That's the problem that self-supervised learning solves. So I'll just go through it step by step, how basically self-supervised learning works with this very simple example. So consider this case study where you have to classify animals given these images. So normally you would label them and then train it, so the network learns it and then predict on new data set. This is how supervised learning works. But for self-supervised learning, what we do is we design a proxy task. Actually, what is a proxy task? So a proxy task is basically a task that we define ourselves, uh, which is a secondary task, and for that we do not require any labels. And for example, for this particular case, the data set is rotated 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So this is how the data set would be, and the task would be to predict the degrees of freedom of the image, irrespective of the animal category. So as you can see, this is a different task from the original task. But why are we doing this? We are doing this because we want to capture the representations and the features inside the neural network. So we are hoping that by training on this proxy task, the neural network learns the important features. For example, if the legs of the horses, for example, if it is horizontal, then it is 90 degree. If it is tilted and it is upside down, 180 degree, or in some way it learns these features, and then we can use this on the main task. So after this model is pre-trained, and then we use it for the normal task of actually uh, using these animal images and then classifying it, but now with a few labeled samples. So you can see the advantage of this is that already the number of labeled samples that we use has decreased significantly. And mostly the network learns the parameter learns captures the important features in its parameters, and so we avoid the labeling of the images essentially. So this is how self-supervised learning is. And now let's move on to the main task. So contact rich manipulation requires actually both two types of feedback: visual and haptic. So visual would be the images that are captured from a camera, and haptic would be the touch, the haptic feedback, haptic sensors that get contact conditions between the object and environment. And the goal for visual feedback is to gather semantic and geometric information. So semantic essentially means generating relevant information, or information that gives us meaning of an object, right? So for example, a phone, we know that it is used for a particular case, for a particular task, and a pen is used for a different task. So actually getting some sort of meaning from it, and geometric information. So this is the visual part of it. And the haptic part is aims to capture the contact conditions between the object and the environment in order to actually get accurate localization and control. And the important thing is that these two modalities, vision and touch, are complementary and concurrent. That is, they are occurring simultaneously. The data is captured from these two sensors simultaneously, and they are complementary in that uh, contact rich manipulation is enhanced when we use both of these sensors instead. Consider the alternative case when we use just the visual sensors or just the haptic sensors. So when we use both of these sensors together, then they complement each other and we get better manipulation. How it works, hopefully it will get more clearer as we go through the slides. And the two modalities have very different dimensions, frequencies, and characteristics. So as you can imagine, like the visual data and the touch data are totally different, and they have different dimensions, frequencies, and characteristics. Two just facts that I would like to point out is that there are certain multimodal features and that generalize across different tasks. So these are the kind of features that we are interested in, because the goal of this paper is also to perform contact rich manipulation for a variety of different tasks of a similar nature, but different, essentially. And the manual design of a robot controller that combines different modalities with very different characteristics is very difficult. So this is another just fact that I would want to point out. And there are some existing approaches. I'll not go into the existing approaches because they are not very relevant, but I will just point out the important facts, important things that are necessary to understand this paper. So generally, deep reinforcement learning is used to learn control policies for high dimensional inputs. But it is very difficult to apply on real robots because of sample complexity. And another thing is that another drawback of other existing approaches is that learning based methods, uh, the proposed manipulation strategies are often task specific, and we want strategies that work across tasks as well. So this is another thing. And manipulation policies also close the control loop, often around a single modality, often vision. So by modality we are referring here to the two modalities that are used here, vision and touch. And also for the existing approaches, new policies are required for new geometries. So also for every geometry we would have to get new policies. So I'd like to pause here and ask you all, does it make sense, or do you have some questions right now, because we'll be proceeding step by step. So does anyone have any question right now?
Just a quick question. Um, so reinforcement learning is, I don't know, it's a silly question. Reinforcement learning is also a type of unsupervised learning, right? If I
No, I think it's a separate category. So
or
then
its own.
machine learning has these three categories:
Mhm.
unsupervised learning, supervised learning, and reinforcement learning. So
Mhm.
to give you an idea, like in Supervised learning, basically we have an image and we have images with labels, right? You know
Yeah.
that. And in reinforcement learning, what we do is, for example, we have an image. So let me take this particular example because it's interesting. So to train a robot to play the game of ping pong, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever that, the ping pong mobile phone game, to play that game, basically you would capture different frames. And in supervised learning, each frame would have a label as going up or down, which would represent the action, right? So
Mm-hmm.
image plus up or down, this particular thing would be fed to the network. This is the supervised learning case. And for reinforcement learning, we don't have this up or down action. We are not feeding it. So it
Mm-hmm.
has to learn on its own. So we feed the image, and the network that we feed it to, it learns the policy. So it is, so what is learned is called policy in reinforcement learning. But we feed the images, and then we feed the images, we record the action, and then we
Mm-hmm.
feed as the action, as it
Rewards or
moves.
penalties.
Sorry. Okay. We feed the image. We give a random action, actually up or down. It's given randomly, and then the frame changes. Right. If it moves up, the
Mm-hmm.
frame changes, and for the new image, a new frame, again a random action is given, and then it repeats, and it repeats for a lot of steps till at the end. For example, if it wins, so we have like a series of actions now.
Mm-hmm.
uh, so that would be one winning scenario. And for you can imagine, like, there would be lots of games, 99.9% of the games where it would
Mm-hmm.
lose, but just like 0.1% of the games where it would win. And uh, that would be the reward. The games on which it wins, it is rewarded, and then it learns the policy. Basically, the
Mm-hmm.
policy, in case a neural network is used, would be the parameters again. So this is some of the existing approaches, and yeah, I don't think I need to go into details of that, because they are just to uh, give relevance as to what are the existing researches which were referenced and improved upon in this particular paper. The primary contributions of this paper are, uh, it proposes a model for multimodal contact representation. So one part is a compact representation model for contact rich manipulation, and another part is using both kinds of feedback for searching the hole, aligning the peg, and inserting it for demonstration. um, Another thing is evaluation of generalization to tasks. So the thing that I mentioned before, that it should be generalized to variety of different tasks with, for example, different peg geometry, and should be robust to perturbation and sensor noise. So hopefully after this point, I think slowly and steadily things would start to make more sense. So this is how the pipeline looks. We have multimodal sensory inputs captured from the camera, the haptic sensor, and also a proprioception input, which we'll address in the coming slides, and we represent it in a compact manner. This representation is what brings us to a policy. Essentially, we learn a policy, and then the control step is done, and the robot performs the action, basically. So an important thing to point out here is that the multimodal compact representation is learned using self supervision. And another thing that I want to point out is that we learn a compact representation because in one of the existing papers we see that deep reinforcement learning policies, deep reinforcement learning approaches are used for high dimensional inputs, but sample complexity is a problem there. So that's why we try to compact the input representation. So automatic label, so self supervision as we understand is automatic label generation using set of predictive tasks. So we'll define the tasks, like for example we define the 90-degree 180-degree uh, uh, detection classification task. So this improves the sample efficiency for policy learning basically. So let's go move on to how the sensor inputs look like. So we have three particular sensors. We have a fixed camera, we have a wrist mounted force torque sensor. Here you can see it, and joint encoders in each of the joints for the robot arm. So the camera actually, sorry, so the camera actually captures the RGB images of 128 by 128 resolution, and the haptic feedback from the wrist mounted force torque sensor, it's taken over a 32 millisecond window, and so each force torque reading is a vector of a size 6. So we have 32 by 6 readings essentially. And another thing is we have proprioceptive data from the joint encoder. So proprioception is essentially the robot understanding its own state by means of the joint angles, which we get using the joint encoder. So current, position and velocity of the end effector by means of forward kinematics that we apply using the given uh, each of the joint position and velocity. Yep. So this is how the sensors look like. Now this is the main part of this discussion is multimodal compact representation. So we are using a self supervision approach. How are we going to do that? Let's see. So multimodal sensory inputs are actually fed to these encoders first. So the RGB, for RGB camera inputs we have an image encoder. For force torque sensor we have a force encoder, and for proprioception we have a proprioception encoder. Low dimensional compact representation is obtained after feeding it to this network using a self-supervision approach. Don't worry if this doesn't make sense, it will definitely make sense after 4 or 5 slides when everything connects. Uh, and the reason why we are using why we are using self-supervision is because multimodal encoders have 500,000 parameters, and it increases the computation tremendously. So we want to have a low dimensional compact representation, which is why we are uh, using this self supervision approach. And so these multimodal encoders, we have an image encoder which is a flownet. We don't need to understand what these models are, but just quickly going through it. And the output of it is a 128 dimension feature vector. The output of force vector is 64 dimensional feature vector. Output of two layer multi-layer perceptron is 32 dimensional feature vector. So these are the outputs. You can see how big uh, the representation vector would be combining these things, these three uh, outputs from the encoders. So concatenation of these three vectors, but if we are using a multi-layer perceptron, and so the concatenation of these three features actually just gives us this 128 dimension, right? And so this particular representation captures task relevant features, and the same representation is used for similar contact rich tasks. This is the thing that we addressed in the beginning, that we want to have a representation that can work for multiple tasks of a similar nature. And we also have an action encoder which actually encodes the next action using a two-layer multi-layer perceptron. So after these particular things, we have an encoded next action and 128 dimensional multimodal representation. So as we know that for self supervision we need certain objectives. So this is where these three boxes that you see come in. These define the objectives for self supervision, and so using these particular objectives we get this multimodal representation as output. So the goal of this entire complicated looking network is just that we use this multimodal sensory type of inputs which is higher dimensional, and we get a compact representation which is represented here by multimodal representation here. And the objectives for self supervision are uh, we predict optical flow using this flow predictor network, and we predict end effector contact using contact predictor, and we check whether the multimodal outputs are aligned or not, because alignment would also be a major thing, right? The camera, the force stock sensor, the proprioception, they have different frequencies, but they should be aligned over time. So one image capture should correspond to the force stock reading taken at that particular time instant, right? So these are the three objectives by means of which we are actually getting this multimodal representation. So let me go back to the simple example that we discussed here, and connect these two things so it makes sense. So here, as you can see, the proxy task was using these particular images, rotating them, and actually learning these network parameters, right? And then applying this thing on the main task. So more or less we are doing the same thing here. So the proxy tasks are actually this optical flow prediction, contact prediction, alignment prediction. These would give us the proxy tasks, and then uh, we learned the networks, like the parameters would be updated and we would learn it, and then uh, based on that we get a multimodal representation. So this is how the flow predictor looks like. I don't think going into the architecture of it makes sense, because even I don't know why the architecture chosen is. I think that's more experimental. Uh, the output of flow predictor is flow map. The output of a contact predictor is a binary classification whether it's making contact or not, right? And alignment also, we have a binary classification. So we check these losses. So for two we have cross entropy loss, and for one we have end to end point error, and we sum these three losses and we minimize end to end using stochastic gradient descent on a data set of rolled out trajectories. Hopefully now it should make more sense, because till now I think things were a bit disconnected, but this slide is where everything should come together. So here we can see this particular image. This is the sensor input encoding. This is where we are encoding the sensor input, and this is the self supervision objectives. Like, just think of it as the tasks, the proxy tasks we are giving it, uh, so as to learn the multimodal representation. And we also take into account the action sequence here, to also get the action conditional optical flow, because for the policy we would need an association with the action as well. So the important thing to know is that this multimodal sensory input, which is diverse and very big, is uh, converted into a 128D multimodal compact representation. I think this is the main takeaway from this. This representation learning network is trained end to end through self supervision. And now let's move on to the reinforcement learning part, policy learning. So before that, does anyone want to ask anything?
We are still here.
Okay, do you want to ask anything or should I continue?
I think I continue.
Okay, all right. So then let's move on to the reinforcement learning part. So this is you can now I think link that we get a multimodal representation based on the self supervision system that we had in the previous slides. So this is the output that is now used for the reinforcement learning part. It is fed to a policy network, and the policy network only gives a 3D displacement delta x movement of the robot end effector as output, and a deep reinforcement learning approach is used. So I don't know how much of it I should cover, but I'll just go briefly into defining the model free reinforcement learning problem. So we model the manipulation task as a Markov decision process, and the state space is the low dimensional compact multimodal representation. So the only aim of the whole uh, self supervision thing that we did was to get this compact multimodal representation so that it can be used as a state for the reinforcement learning task. That was the only goal of it. And we define the actions as a 3D displacements delta x. So again, like the examples that we took, I think now it should intuitively make sense, right? So we are representing the state as multimodal compact representation, and the actions are delta x 3D movement. So like the example that we took of the image frames, that would be the state in the other example that we took, and up or down would be the action. So here the multimodal representation is the state and delta x is the action.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give an intuitive sense of it, because the mathematics of it, to be honest, I have also not gone into too much detail of. And This is the action, then the state transition is how the state changes.
Mhm.
And a reward function I have not even covered in this particular slide. They have also done reward engineering, which is another uh, really detailed thing to discuss maybe sometime later. And the goal is to determine the policy, right? And such that we optimize, such that we maximize the expected discounted reward.
Mhm.
um, yeah, that's it. And then once we know the policy, we feed it to control. And this also I'll just briefly cover, so I think it makes sense now. The state uh, multimodal representation, which is a state, is fed to the policy network, and after using deep reinforcement learning approach, we get actions which are fed to trajectory generator. And then uh, this the desired end effector position is calculated from delta x and xt. So this is the desired end effector position. Then impedance PD controller is fed to the impedance PD controller. And then and also the dynamics model is fed, the output of the impedance controller and the output from the dynamics model are fed to the operational space controller. Don't ask me what these controllers are doing, I didn't prepare. If anyone wants to like explain it, feel free, but I haven't covered it, because I wanted to just give an overview of the whole system. And
I think it's just we have a sorry,
yeah,
we have an action and we are just executing the action on the
yeah,
robot.
exactly, this is just action
Exactly.
execution, so I don't
Yeah, how
yeah,
I don't think.
exactly, that's true. Our controller takes as input the Cartesian end effector displacements delta x, right, from the policy at 20 hertz, and outputs the direct torque. So I think, yeah, so I'll not go into
Hmm.
these models. The output is the torque, the input is delta x. That's it.
Yep.
And the findings, the important findings from this paper is that using these multimodal inputs, we generalize over different geometry different configurations and different clearance sizes as well, and it is robust to external perturbation. um, and these are like a few comparisons. You can see no vision, no haptics, and then full model. So this is giving like the best result for complete insertion, right? Comparing to other models. So this is what this is showing here. And then this particular image, the one on the right, is actually showing that it transfers well to different geometries, right? So the right two ones are transferring to new policies and new representations. And just to mention a limitation of this particular approach in this paper is that it's applicable only for tasks that require 3 degree of freedom, control of position and orientation. Okay, that's it. Yeah, I know it's not like fully detailed, but I think full detail cannot
Can
possibly be covered.
can you share the
Thank you.
slide also?
Sorry?
Can you share the slide? Maybe later.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I'll upload the slides as well.
Mhm.
Um, but I
I'm
mean,
just thinking.
yeah. So I think was this thing clear? I mean, this is the thing that like how we are using self supervision, this
Mhm.
particular thing, and the overall system, like why we are doing self supervision and like feeding it
Somewhat,
somewhat, right?
somewhat it was clear.
And now I think if you would read it, it would like save you tremendous time, because it took me a while to really understand
Yeah, like
this as well.
I've never heard of self-supervision at least, so now I have an intro. So thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, same.
Yeah.
And it's
So,
and also
so it's
super interesting. Sorry, for how they encode the data together. So this multimodal representation is definitely interesting how they did it.
taking feedback from the robot also. Then again, it's sending to the trajectory generator model.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's how it's learning. Uh, you can move to the yeah this.
Yeah. uh,
Okay.
so you mean learning the action delta x? So that's like just
Mm.
normal deep reinforcement learning.
Yeah, I guess
So
we're majorly missing in terms of the policy is like how they made the reward function, right? Like how,
yeah,
like even the
yeah, it
concept.
would be like to be honest, I just skipped this particular part.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are interested, you can go through
But
it later as well. But it's like
yeah.
it's another field in itself. Reward engineering is it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But at
it's
least I think the goal, I mean, if you put it in the semantics of it, is you want to insert that the peg into the hole.
yeah,
But how do you translate that into a reward function? That it's I don't know.
yeah, that's
Can't
that's
think of it.
yeah, that's a good question. But yeah,
Hmm.
I didn't get the time to actually go through this as
No, we
well.
can look into it.
uh,
Yes,
but
awesome.
uh, but we can do this as well. Maybe I'll refer to it
Hmm.
again later. Yeah.
Hmm.
And we can do like maybe uh, those who are interested can also read this particular paper, and also we can expand on it and also cover the mathematics maybe later. But I guess for introduction, I guess this was uh,
Hmm.
discovered majorly the whole system and how it's working in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has anyone used the Fostock sensors feedback? Doing some sort of servoing or feedback control. I don't know, for grasping or anything. Like,
I haven't, not yet at least. I
mhm.
haven't.
Awesome. So I haven't had any experience with it either, but I'm hoping I would get to do at least test some of these results from these papers. You know, if they have trained policies,
Yeah,
might
exactly. I
try to
mean,
execute.
that I think it would be like more interesting if we actually work on some of the projects, but I
Mhm.
haven't had the opportunity to work with for
Do
stock
they have like
sensors.
any videos of their
Ah, yeah,
policy
we can
execution?
we can actually take a look at the
Mhm.
some of the videos, and I think
Videos are fun.
it's
Videos
like
is nice.
it's like it's I think the official page has covered it in a pretty interesting way. Let me just copy this.
If we go videos, also you can see it. Maybe.
Sorry.
Maybe if you, yeah, I'm sure you
I
can
think
find it here.
you all should just I think check out this thing because the
Just.
whole paper is explained in a very compact way
Mm-hmm.
here. So here
Mm-hmm.
you can see like 0% success rate. So it is trying to insert it and it doesn't even reach it. I think, right? And then 100 episode is like it finds a way that sliding across and then
Mm-hmm.
going to it is probably a better way, and then after this 300 episodes it actually inserts it. I think this is too small, right?
That's so cool. I mean, so it's amazing what reinforcement learning, the whole concept of reinforcement learning, it's so organic somehow.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
but like one.
so-
Even
Sorry.
yeah, you were saying.
No, I was just saying that this one particular disadvantage of it is uh, what's it called? Uh, I'm forgetting the term, but that we have to we have to do so many we have to do so many experiments, and just 1% will get
Mhm.
better results. What was the term for it? I
Mhm, mhm.
just uh, uh,
Even I've shared in the reinforcement learning channel. I've shared a video where ETH Zurich lab did generated a gate cycle for the quadruped using deep reinforcement learning.
Mhm.
ah, okay.
Yeah, they did. I think the first one to do it was, I don't know who did it. Maybe, I don't know. They did it for bipedal robot. And I guess this is a reproduction of it.
Hmm.
Interesting stuff. All right, I'll look
Yeah,
into it. Thank you, Apur.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's quite. And Apurva, did you also like attend the reinforcement learning seminar, or you shared some event right there?
No, no, I haven't shared an event. I have shared a video YouTube link regarding.
Ah, okay. It's
Yeah, yeah.
the other Apurva actually shared
Yeah, we have
an
to upload.
event. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
The other Apurva, there
yes,
was
yes.
this event of reinforcement learning.
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
Yeah, I think he has shared in, I think in Newsfeed, I guess. Here, reinforcement learning day, but I guess it was, yeah, it's already over. I'll
Okay,
ask
okay,
him. We'll ask him later if he attended it actually, or he just shared.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm just actually looking for the term. It's suddenly slipped out of my mind. Uh, what is that term called where which just highlights this particular thing that it wins just uh, the winning is sparse basically.
Mhm. So it takes many, many experiments to even
Yeah,
get
exactly.
1% success.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is one disadvantage of reinforcement learning.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some approaches that are used as
Mhm.
well. Like sometimes the reward functions are defined at after few steps instead of just at the end, because at the end would mean that even if the whole sequence is going well and in the end it makes a negative move, then the whole sequence is given less importance, right? So
Mhm.
and yeah, that's if reward is given after every step or every few steps, then it learns quicker, so to say.
Okay. I think I have to read up a bit more on reinforcement learning, but this was a good intro into it. I
I
was
can
just
recommend you this particular video and this particular channel as well. I
Mhm.
think
Okay.
it's Archive Insights. This is a really good introduction.
Ah, so he explains,
From the amazing
simplifies
results of the
papers that he read. Or
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
okay,
He simplifies the way. So this is a pretty good channel. This one
cool.
you can
All right,
check. Yeah.
we'll look into it.
All right.
But
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something.
no. I was just going to say, but thank you for doing this
Yeah.
paper reading. I think it was good.
Yeah. Thanks for
Have,
joining. I hope
have
it
you
made some sense.
shared the paper? I mean,
Uh, the paper, actually, you can just like Google it. You will find the paper easily. But I'll share the slides after this.
paper. Okay, fine.
Yeah, paper. Just copy the name. I mean, paper is easy to get.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, uh, any other question or anything?
I think as feedback,
Yeah.
maybe next time
Feedback.
when we introduce the paper, we start with the video. It's always interesting
Okay.
because because we started with theory, and I think there were many more in the meeting room, and then they probably fell off because they thought it was too much theory or it was not their field. We
Yeah,
don't really know, but I think
I get it.
if we started with the video, it would be like, this is what we're doing now.
That's a good
Yeah.
suggestion actually. Yeah. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think I should have shown this particular
No, this is
link
the
before,
first
right?
event, so
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll take that into note. And for the next paper, who would want to volunteer? It's actually it's a lot of effort, but you also learn a lot while reading a paper.
mhm.
Yeah.
The thing I would do one, but I'm still like I'm in the same topic doing grasping and manipulation and all that. So it would be a bit repetitive. So maybe I can present some other time.
But actually, it's monthly, right?
Oh, that's also right. You're also right.
Yeah. If you would want to, you can take for the next month,
Okay.
and you can put lots of videos there as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I do stuff, like I try to make it visual because that's how it attracts my attention too.
Yeah.
But I think you did well in terms of representing this multimodal representation, and
I think this is
that
Yeah,
was
like
yeah.
interesting.
this is a challenge to explain this, right? It's
Mhm.
not so easy to explain it, but I guess I shouldn't have covered this much theory. That's a feedback
No,
for
like
I think this
actually for
time.
me, this part was pretty interesting. Like how to encode this data, which are
Yeah.
that for me that was interesting. But I don't know. It's hard. I guess on your part it was hard because you don't know who the target audience will be. Are they newbies or are they more experts? Do they know about reinforcement learning or not?
Yeah, I think that that's the reason
Mm.
why I like added this particular
Mhm.
slide, so I don't have to
Yeah, true.
explain everything. But yeah, I know this is like challenging
Mhm.
to explain as well. Uh, but yeah, hopefully you got something from it, and I think once you
Definitely, we did.
read the paper, you definitely get
Mhm.
more from it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in the future it's better if we read the paper beforehand and then we can have discussions on the paper.
Exactly. That's a really good point.
Yeah, true. So like maybe like an hour before also,
But for
you can
that,
just
like,
tease.
yeah,
Like if you send the link and then we would just go and see. I know this video will catch our attention. Just like you give the reminder 5 minutes to the 5 minutes more to till we do the paper reading. Like if half an hour before you gave a link to the video, and then we'll see we are doing something that is sort of reinforcement learning,
yeah,
and then that would I think will motivate people more.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to lead into the topic. Like not everything we have to show in this 1 hour because it's very short as well.
Yes,
We include
yes, yes.
discussion.
Yeah, so I think
And
his two takeaways are, so for that the topic should be actually chosen beforehand as well to
that's
allow the
also true.
people to have the time to read.
Okay.
Yeah. All right,
So we have
guys.
2 events.
Yes.
One event every week. Or
We have one event every week, and this reading paper is like every month.
final Sunday. Okay.
Yeah. So if like more people volunteer, then it would be better if we have more reading paper sessions because
Mhm.
this is really good.
And sorry again for this every Saturday meet. What do we actually do? Like yesterday we did about computer vision in general, but you mentioned that we talk about projects or
Ah, uh,
what?
yeah, normally we maybe let me show you the previous one, some of the slides. Meeting and for example for deep learning for bin picking.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot for.
So
Mm-hmm.
basically here we define the problem first,
Mm-hmm.
and after defining the problem, uh, what we have is that we have a brainstorming session. So we discuss the ideas before the person presents the solution. So in this case I was to present the solution, but we had a really good brainstorming session where everyone gave their own approaches. Yeah, we can use image segmentation,
Mm-hmm.
we can use this thing, you can use that thing, and I think that was pretty good. And then after that
Mm-hmm.
I just go on to explain this particular approach. Okay, it's not really loading. But yeah, it's like after that I explained the approach, and in the last meeting also what we did was after this particular brainstorming session for time series 1. So after
Mm-hmm.
brainstorming session, the person actually shared the code. So Shujat presented it. Shujat also
Mm-hmm.
first gave a code walkthrough. Uh, and after that he went into the theory. So I also
Mm-hmm.
understand
Mm-hmm.
your point that giving something interesting in the beginning would be better,
Mm-hmm.
um, instead of putting theory in the beginning.
No, I mean that way the reach might be bigger. But okay, awesome. So
Yeah.
do we have to present projects that we have already worked on before or have studied before?
Um,
It's sort of like a
so so ideally this particular approach is like is for the projects that you've already worked on before, or
mm-hmm.
at least if you have not worked on, then you know it deeply enough to
Okay.
explain. I think that would also be fine.
Okay.
um, but like something that we did yesterday, for that, yeah, we can you can you have to like search the concept or something else on the spot, so
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to prepare
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
Thank you for.
Sorry, I got disconnected by mistake.
No, it's good.
Yeah. So so you actually changed your name to Sai now.
Yeah, I didn't know that we can actually change our usernames, and I found it and I changed it.
This
Nice.
Discord is an amazing tool.
Yeah. I think Discord can get complicated as well because not everyone is used to it. Very few people use Discord, but for our purpose, I think this is a better tool, right? We can like organize stuff. We can share.
Yeah.
Uh,
That-
we can have meetings. We can share the representations and all these things.
Yeah, I've told you a number of times. It's amazing what you have done to the server. I didn't know this stuff was possible. So,
Yeah, it's like it offers a lot of
mhm. Okay, guys, I have to leave now. Thank you, Chandandeep,
Okay,
for
thanks a
the
lot
paper
for
reading.
joining, everyone. Thanks a lot, Atma.
Yeah, we'll sign up in the volunteer room
Yeah.
next time.
So for the next week, we still need to we need a volunteer. I think for feature extraction, right? So Sai, you were going to no, not Sai. I think Apurv, you were taking the role, right?
No, actually, I was doing that topic SIFT.
Yeah, Sift exactly. So, but we were like planning to keep it general on feature extraction. Okay, no worries. We can discuss that in the chat room later.
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. But Sift is fine for you, right? You can present Sift next time, and we
No,
can.
I can take ARB. I mean, in feature extractions, there are different approaches, right? There's a hog based, and there's a I forget. There's a
Iris.
histogram based, and there's a binary base. So we can cover a range of different topics in feature extraction. So I can
Okay.
take ARB.
We have MSCRs and Harris corner detection stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, I can explain SIFT, but yeah.
So maybe you can write on the volunteer and on the volunteer meetup channel, and then we can fix a slot. And yeah, I mean, we can even have a more casual discussion on the topic feature extraction and Sift as well. So
Okay. Uh, okay.
but if you like prepare a presentation on Sift, just Sift, and then I think Sai, you were talking about other approaches that you want to share, and then we can have like mutual multiple people can also share. Maybe someone else also has some
Okay.
interest. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Maybe
can.
you can write on the volunteer meetup, and then we'll see like how many people are interested and stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, we'll do that. All right, guys.
Bro,
Okay.
Bye bye.
Chandan, I had a suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was telling that why don't you make roles for like specific areas, like uh, let's say it's computer vision. So yesterday we had 15 topics to talk about. So why not make 15 different roles out of that, and if and let people pick those roles in which they are more I mean, they have more knowledge in that. I mean, they think that they can help others in those topics, and then they can just simply ping that role. So whoever has that role will get a ping, and then they can ask for help.
So assigning roles for the topics, for example. Uh,
Like let's say I want to have for computer vision, but in computer vision for a certain topic. So instead of pinging everyone who has the computer vision tag, let's say I just want help in structure from motion. So
mm,
there should be a separate role for that, and the people will take those separate roles. So you can make a whole group of roles for computer vision, a whole group of roles of for let's
mm,
say kinematics, dynamics, and
Um,
other mechanical engineering topics, and
yeah, I
maybe for
get it.
electrical engineering
actually,
as well. Yeah.
uh, actually, it's a good idea, but I'm a mechanical engineer myself, engineering student myself. But if someone wants to delve into other topics, I mean, we shouldn't divide the groups based on what we know, or yeah.
No, no, it's not division. It's not division. It's like I want help in this specific topic. Let's say the topic is
Okay,
chapter
okay,
one.
Hmm.
Okay,
okay, okay.
and if some other person knows chapter one really well, so he will
Yeah,
ping the guys of chapter one, and then they will get a ping, and then they will help each other out.
Yeah,
That's my point.
I think I think this can be done. This will take some time though.
Yeah, it
I'm not
will
sure
take some time. Yeah,
if
it
I'll
will.
have time in the
Mm.
next coming weeks, but I can understand this point. So I can like write a post with the topics names, right? For example, computer vision, visuals, and all these
Yeah,
things, and so you can just like react to it, and I'll
but
add a bot, and you get the topic
Yeah,
assigned
even
yeah,
as
so
role.
yeah, so there is a Yak PDP bot, so
Yeah.
it has React roles. So you can
Yeah,
assign
I get
roles
that.
in that, and then uh, you just have to do one thing. You just have to assign a different emoji for each role.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it so it does it need not be the exact same thing, but it can be any emoji.
Yeah, 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 I understand. Yes. Sure,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, note it down, and yeah, when I get time, I'll see how I can do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
this can be done. And I had one more suggestion as to there can be a channel named 1 year projects. So like I have a 1 year project that I want to complete it by next December or even November. So people can go there and then just write it down, and then at the end of the year, maybe during Christmas, people might showcase their project. So the projects need not be something physical. It can be a piece of code, even a library,
Yeah.
even
But I
a
mean,
mechanical
it's
device.
already there, right? In the projects section, this is what the project
Uh,
section is like, where you.
yeah, but people what they usually do is make a project and then they add it.
No,
I mean,
no,
uh,
no, no. It's
I
like
want
in
to have a
the.
project review session. It's
Yeah. So
I
the
mean,
project that
at
you
the
are
end of the year, yeah.
the project that you're doing, or you're like you want to do, right? So this thing is actually, I
Mm.
think maybe it's not clear, and I'll rename it. But in the project section, actually, you're supposed to write the projects that you are working, or you want to work on. So you can see
Yeah,
like
so
accountability
yeah.
needed, yes or no, all these things are
Hmm.
written. So this is
Yeah.
exactly that, but I think maybe it's a bit unclear, so I'll.
So the part which I was saying that at the end of the year we review each other's project and then maybe give reviews or even appreciate each other
Yeah, and
as a
yeah,
community.
so yeah, that's what I'm saying. We already have that. Like one part of the meetup, the weekly meetup that we do is a volunteer. Actually, nobody, not volunteer. Sorry, the accountability section where you actually show your progress, that okay, it's been 2 weeks and I've done this much, and you can ask like,
Yeah.
I'm stuck at this
So
place.
okay.
So this is actually
Yeah.
already there, so you can maybe start sharing this as well. Let me show you what I mean. So if anybody needs to leave, it's totally fine. If Atma, you need to leave
Hmm.
because you're in a hurry, it's totally fine. And yeah, thanks a lot for joining as well. I'll
Thank you
just
for organizing this.
thank you.
yeah, I'll just quickly share the accountability link if anyone is interested. You can leave as well, and we can meet next time with some new topic and new volunteers.
Hmm. I think I'll have to leave now, but I did see the grind mode and the focus zone, which I found pretty interesting.
Yeah,
I might make
yeah,
I might
that's
make use of it like in a bit.
yeah. I've used it a couple of times, and I think it works because once you join it and
Hmm.
leave it, then everyone sees that okay, you are not
Yeah,
wasting
this
time, so you work as well. So
using accountability is it's an something that I've tried before.
yeah.
Let me try this out. Let's see if it works on Discord.